Let me start with some of the kinds of queries and questions that I've been, faced with by my students, by managers in organizations, by leadership in organizations. One of the first kinds of, anxieties or questions that I've had to deal with is, can people really change? So, I have students coming and saying that, can I really learn assertiveness? Can I really develop confidence? Or can I develop good skills at persuading and influencing others? I have managers coming and saying, but what will happen if I try to change? I may lose or I may dilute my strengths, things that I have been comfortable with, things that I'm doing very well right now. Or I have organizations coming and asking me, how do we help our employees to move or transition from earlier roles to new roles, from managerial styles to leadership styles? And I think that all of these anxieties, all of these questions, all of these issues really point to one big underlying question that I think we should all confront ourselves with, and that is, can people change? And in fact, whenever I start my class on self management or I do a program on self management, I start with this question. I ask my uh, participants or my students or my clients, can people change? And they never fail to, make me happy. They all give me a very big, resounding yes. Of course, people can change. All of us change, and I feel very happy. But then, as I probe a little deeper, as I give them a case of a difficult employee and ask them, so how would you handle this? I get a different picture. There seem to be a few caveats to this belief that people can change. So, as we start trying to look at ourselves as, a model of change and development, somebody will come up with, can I change my basic nature? I mean, how can we change our basic nature? We will never change, and we will not really change. These are all just cosmetic things. So I often ask this question very gently, where did this basic nature come from? Where did you get your basic nature from? Or sometimes I have people saying, but why should I change? I have to be authentic and consistent to my true nature, to my true self. Take me as I am. This is the way I am. If I, in fact, that is one of the things that is said to me by managers, to say that if I try to change, I will, in a sense, dilute my strengths. So you can see that it's almost like a threat to an individual's sense of self or identity. This is who I am. What will happen to me if I change? And then, of course, there are some of these questions which, or some of these statements, in fact, which are interesting, where people say, well, young people can change, but older people, not really. So I ask, what do you mean by older people? When do our change cells stop working? So, they look at me gently and, they don't want to hurt my sentiments. So they will say, so, recently in a class, one of my students said, 30 plus, 30 plus, that's old. Okay. Then, of course, I also have people saying, okay, 40 plus. So it seems like, if you don't change now, time is going to run out for you. You may never change in your lives. Well, I also have a lot of people giving me, counter examples. Well, I was working in this organization and I had to deal with this employee and he never changed. So, actually, people don't really change. Now, when I have to deal with these kinds of, kind of questions or caveats or, somewhere kind of disbelief that, people don't really change, I think that's the first thing that I have to change. or get people to change. So I ask my students or my participants or clients that then should we all resign ourselves to remain where we are, to remain victims of our childhood or our past experiences? Well, then I confront them with some information. I say, well, the good news is that people can change. But then again, there is a caveat. So, what is the caveat? Well, people can change if they want to change, if they have a motivation to change. All those examples of people we've met in organizations who have not changed, perhaps they didn't want to change. People can change, but they should want to change. So that is something that we need to keep in mind. And it's not just me who's saying this. If I, try to talk about some of the personality theorists or, counselors and therapists who have, written about uh, human behavior or human change, um, a very famous personality theorist called Erik Erikson, and I'm going to paraphrase what he said. He says, unlike Humpty Dumpty, people can be put together again. So he has a very positive belief that all of us can get past early, barriers, early constraints, early problems, and we can put ourselves together again as we go through life. In fact, he talks about, personality development as something that happens throughout our lives, from infancy to old age. And he believes that all of us are open systems. We transact with the environment. We have to face new challenges and crises. We have to take on new roles and responsibilities. And all these impact us in some way. They change us in some way. And therefore, we keep changing throughout life. There's another very famous therapist and counselor called Carl Rogers, and he says that all of us, all human beings, are constantly in the process of becoming. In fact, I want to quote something from a book that he's written on becoming a person. And he's written this thing that sort of really appealed to me. He said, a person is a fluid process, not a fixed and static entity, a flowing river of change, not a block of solid material, a continually changing constellation of potentialities, not a fixed quantity of traits. It's such a beautiful vision of all of us as evolving, developing human beings. It's so energizing, so motivating. And so now I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how do we move along this path of continuous personal growth? How can we keep working on ourselves and becoming maybe 2.0 versions of who we were? Well, I think the first step that we all have to undertake is to really buy into this model of becoming. Are we static beings who have a basic nature and we have to accept what the cards or the hand that God or fate handed out to us, and we have to stay where we are? Or are we always going to see ourselves as people who are growing, moving, changing, evolving, becoming? So if you see yourself as a process and not a static set of traits and qualities, you will feel that perhaps I can change. So I think the first step is to really embrace or understand and accept that people can change, because that's the first point of resistance. And I think that I use a term which many of my students would be familiar with. I like to call all of us works in progress. We are all works in progress. Nobody has arrived. Nobody has become who they are supposed to become. We are all struggling, moving along, trying to become better versions or changed versions, a little different versions of who we are. So we are all what I call WIPs, works in progress. And I think that if we see ourselves as works in progress, we are willing to challenge ourselves, we are willing to take on challenges, we are willing to take on new roles which will test us in new ways. So it opens up a world of possibilities for us. But if we are stuck to being, then we are anxious. We don't want to try out new things. We say, no, this is the limit of my capabilities or my potential, and this is where I plan to stay. So I want to stick to my knitting. The second step that I would like to talk about is that, all of us need to take stock of ourselves and update ourselves on who we are. So when we look at ourselves, you know, I think, if I say, are you self aware? Well, many of us will say, yes, by and large, I'm self aware. But, I think that very often we have outdated pictures of who we are. These pictures are based on maybe the past, maybe some aspect of ourselves. And I think it's a good idea for us to update ourselves on how we have evolved over a period of time. Let me give you an example. I offer a course at the Institute in which I get students to write their autobiographies. And, I also ask them to analyze themselves at the end of the autobiography. So, why do I do that? Well, one of the reasons is that I think that it allows them an opportunity to, get the baggage from their back and put it down. And in the process of writing their life story, maybe they are able to remember and recognize aspects of themselves that they had lost touch with. So, for example, somebody will say, "My God, I didn't realize I've displayed a lot of mental toughness. I've lost touch with that aspect of myself." Or it also helps my students to understand that they have evolved, that they are works in progress, that there are many aspects in which they have changed from the past, and there are some aspects where they may not have changed. So it helps them to understand this model of becoming, that we are constantly evolving. A third thing that I think is very important, and that is that very many times when my students do the analysis of their life stories, I find that they have held on to some of the stories in their lives and or some experiences in their lives and have used those for self definition. And when I read their life story, I find that there are so many other stories that are given there which contradict or which perhaps supplement these very constrained pictures of self definition that they are uh, sprouting or providing me. And so I try to alert them to some of the aspects, the new stories, the changing stories, the contradictions in their lives that perhaps could give them a more broader understanding of who they are and where they are going. And I think that when I look at this limited picture that we have of ourselves, why do we have limited pictures? Well, one of it could be that maybe there has been a very defining experience in one's life. Maybe one felt that one was not lucky in life, and it has stuck with one or in one's mind. And regardless of new experiences where one may have actually had um, a lot of opportunities, one may have created one's own opportunities, one continues to stick to that picture of, I've not really had a good life, it's been very unlucky. So we don't look at the positives in our lives. So that could be, one kind of reason that we tend to focus on some stories and we think that these are the stories of our lives. I think the other reason that we do this is because I think we all of us try to search for consistency and certainty. I want to know who I am. Am I this or that? Am I good or am I bad? Am I an extrovert or am I an introvert? Am I shy or am I self confident? So we want to reduce all the data that, or we want to avoid all the data that brings out our contradictions. But the fact is that we are all full of contradictions. I am both good and bad. I am both shy and confident. So, how do I deal with my contradictions? How do I accept and work with my contradictions? How do I use my contradictions to expand my understanding of my potential? So, I think that that is the second step, to update ourselves on who we are, to update our theories about ourselves. Because why is it important? Because your picture of yourself, your self concept, has a very, very strong impact on how you look at yourself, your capabilities, and how you deal with your opportunities, how you deal with others. So, if you have a better handle on yourself, you will probably be able to have a better handle on the kind of opportunities and experiences that life throws at you. A third kind of okay, reason why sometimes we tend to stick to limited pictures of ourselves is what some psychologists call being a cognitive miser. You don't want to really kind of uh, get into all the conflicts and dilemmas inside of you. You just say, okay, let's keep it simple. I'm okay. I don't want to think too much about myself. So I pick up simple kind of models of myself and I say I'm going to hold on to these. But the problem with this is that your conflicts and contradictions that you haven't dealt with will come back to haunt you maybe at a time when you're really low. And at that point, you may not be really well prepared or equipped to deal with all these conflicts and dilemmas. So it's always better to put your house in order. Now, the third step that I want to talk about is, in fact, both the third and the fourth steps are really about how do we create the motivation for change inside of us? How do we make ourselves feel like wanting to change? So, the third point is, do I just focus on who I am and where I am right now? Or am I also looking forward to the future and looking at who do I aspire to become? Uh, Carl Jung, a very famous personality theorist, says that your future beckons you, because when you uh, try to envision the future, when you try to look at where you aspire to go, it actually guides you along a path of development. So it's not just about the past and the present, but also about the future possible selves that you could be, that beckon you and that encourage you on the path towards personal growth. So I think it's very important for us to look at our aspirations and goals, to look at where we want to go in the short run. You can keep updating yourself as you go along. But right now, where is it that I want to go? And how can I maybe develop new skills or maybe change old skills so that I can get there? And of course, finally, the fourth step is to be a learner all your life, to take initiative, to get out of your comfort zones, to push yourself, to challenge yourself, to make learning a habit. If you make learning a habit, you will be on the path for continuous lifelong personal growth. You will always challenge yourself. You will always look to upskill yourself. You will always look to developing new competencies in yourself. And therefore, you will keep growing as a person. And I think that one of the things I will just want to sort of finish with is that, you know, uh, one of the things that helps us to change is crisis and challenge and failure. While crises, challenge, failures probably give us our darkest moments, they probably also give us our biggest learning opportunities, because those are the things that push us to want to change or to do something different. If you are happy with who you are, why on earth will you want to change? And therefore, I think we need to look at challenges in a positive light. For example, all of us have been through a very challenging year last year. And all of us have had to deal with a lot of failures, a lot of, sadness, uh, plans going, in taking, going for a toss. And we've had to manage because, whether we liked it or not, the COVID crisis was a reality that we had to deal with. But it has also been an opportunity for all of us to develop new skills, to develop resilience, the ability to bounce back, the ability to have mental toughness, mental strength. And I think that has been a great learning for many of us. So I think I would like to end with telling you that it is your life and your choice. So do you just want to be, or can I invite you on a lifelong journey, to embark on a lifelong journey of personal growth and development? Thank you.